Hello, this is Joshua for Frost Dragon Designs, and today I'd like to talk to you about my Living Bard design for Black Cat RPG Series 5, the Lichgate. Now let's get into the design. Like so many of the other Lichgate designs, the undead version of the Bard came before the living version of the Bard. A lot of these designs, the idea is that, it's like an undead mirror image of the living character. At least that's, kind of what I've backed myself into, since this project has evolved quite a bit since I originally started it. And so this causes a number of interesting things to be happening in the designs. Specifically, if it's supposed to be the same character, but a living and a dead version of them, their handedness doesn't change. So if they're right-handed as the undead version, the living version is right-handed, that sort of thing. So in a lot of the designs, there will be one version that has, say, their shield facing forward in a defensive position. Whereas in the other version of the design, their weapon will be forward, and they'll, by nature just have a more aggressive, active look about them because their weapon is forward. A similar but different feeling thing happens here with the Bard. It's not that we have a sword and shield per se. It's that we have, the instrument and the bow to play the instrument. So we can't just flip, mirror the image and make the living version, because then that would switch the handedness of the Bard. Now, the way I have the undead character facing, the instrument is kind of in front, and they're kind of like almost hiding behind the instrument. You could interpret the magic as them projecting some sort of an aura. Maybe it's like a fear aura or a protection aura. I don't know. They're either way, they are kind of being shielded by the body of the instrument. So when we get to the living version, if we keep the handedness of the character the same, the instrument is no longer kind of out in front. The bow arm is. So the living version, just by nature of that, has a more aggressive look to it. At least that's the direction I went with it. I felt like I kind of had to go with them having a more aggressive look, because if they didn't, then they would have an open look, like an undefended kind of stance, and that seems weird for any sort of RPG character. Now, the magic itself, at first I was trying to kind of mirror what was going on in the undead, where there's like, energy flowing either from the instrument or from the bow itself, kind of like a magic wand situation, but also kind of shrouding the character's head and shoulders to give them kind of an aura or a larger-than-life kind of feel. I do this with a lot of the undead characters, mostly because I needed something to kind of bulk up the skinny bones. Because there's not like muscle mass on the undead characters, they're just skeletons. So while I do that on a lot of the undead type characters, it's not really needed per se on the living characters. Another good example of this would be the monk, where I have this kind of big flame-ish aura on the undead, but the living version does not have that aura because they don't need it to bulk out the character. So that kind of opened me up to try a couple different things for what exactly I was doing with the magic. I don't know whether I was feeling particularly uncreative while working on this, or just the ideas just weren't working. It took quite a while to get to just like this splash energy effect that I ended up with on the bow. I think if I had to go back and redesign this, I'd probably come up with something different. I don't know what. But I just feel like I could have come up with something different. But it looks good either way. I think, honestly, more important than what the magical effect looks like is the color scheme for the Living Bard. The undead is purples. It's bright because it's purple, but it's also kind of a drab, sad kind of color in that design. And so, really, I wanted this to feel bright, happy, just a different energy about it. And so yellow just made a whole lot of sense, and then pink for the magic, yes, also makes a whole lot of sense. It feels like a vibrant character. I mean, yeah, they seem to be quite the badass, but they also seem fun. I've kind of tried to emulate like a Jester's color scheme with the split color on the hood and cloak. I guess that was kind of my way of just, reinforcing the whole idea of living and life, and, just... like what are those signs you used to see in like stores or whatever, the live, laugh, love or whatever? Yeah, it's like that, only as a bard. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching me design this pin, hearing just a few of the thoughts that were rattling around in my head while I was working on it. If you did, please go ahead and like and subscribe. I try to release 1 to 2 new videos a week, although sometimes it's 0. But either way, I would love to have you along for the next one. So thank you again so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.